I've interviewed thousands of people, from serial killers to ministers. Welcome to the interview room. Welcome to the interview room, everybody, on this wonderful Sunday evening. I hope you're all doing well. Have we got a program for you? Going to wait here for just a second, let everybody get in. We'll go over our lineup. So tonight, a big thank you to our mods, our amazing mods, Miss Sophia, our team lead, Miss Maui Girl, Teresa M, and Mimi J2. Thank you, ladies, so much for always being with us. And we can't do this program without you. Thank you to our subscribers, our members, and our Patreon members. We love you guys, and we appreciate you. We ask only here on TIR that you hit that subscribe button, share this program with your friends, and send it out on your social media networks. We consider ourselves one of the best true crime channels on YouTube, where we only stick to the facts and the evidence as it directs us in the course of a case. If you're here for the very first time tonight, we want to welcome you. Thank you so much for being with us. I hope you enjoy tonight's information, and I hope you participate in the chat. We have some great mods, and our format here is we're going to give you a solid hour of information, and then Miss Sophia had a great idea that we take the last, time after that to answer questions, a Q&A, and kind of go over how you guys are seeing things. So I think that is an absolutely amazing idea, and that's the format we're going to go with tonight. Wow, Bryan Kohberger. Does this ever go in a direction that everybody is thinking? I think not. His defense team is doing their job, and then simultaneously, so many moving parts in the court systems here in Idaho. What's really interesting is, they post all of the motions, all of the hearings, all of the, the stipulations, and all of that information is posted online in Idaho. And I just think that is really interesting because most of the time you don't see that from other states. And so, I'm really glad that the authorities and the legislators in Idaho have made that available to the public. We want to welcome each and every one of you, and welcome to our new member, Nice Marie. Thank you so much for joining us. And also, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Ramsey. I had an opportunity. I had a pinched nerve in my shoulder, and so I had to go get that checked. And we were in Albuquerque, New Mexico, just about a week and a half ago. Karen and I were out there. I was training for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, again, another class about interviewing and these folks, as you know, and Dr. Prescott as well. Thank you so much for taking care of my shoulder. get me out of there pretty quick. We sure love you guys. But anyway, we were over there in the Bureau of Indian Affairs again. Another great class, still attached to the group who were investigating in the United States about 1,500 missing women and Native American women from a variety of tribes throughout the United States, and about 6,500 up into Canada and into Alaska. So I've been privileged to be part of that team, to work with them and to guide them through some training. So the one thing about my being out there in the field and working actively with law enforcement is I have learned so much day to day, moment by moment, to each and every one of them. So a shout out to our group. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Mr. Bryan again and the defense tactics. We're going to be talking about the challenging to the grand jury indictment. And I want to put a couple of things up here. As you know, I'm a big in, not only visual, but, audio. I believe that each and every one of us teaches each other day to day, moment to moment. And I'm a visual learner. I don't know about you. What say you guys? I not only have to hear something, but it helps me to see it as well. And so if you've been with us from the beginning here at TIR, I'm a big PowerPoint kind of guy because it just helps me stay true and stay factual. And that's what I like to do. Now, the interesting thing about investigations, when an investigation is going on in a law enforcement agency anywhere in the world, quite frankly, the teams typically go into what I will describe as a circle up, meaning they create a war room or they create a place where, if it's a high volume, very high profile situation, they'll get a room or something to that effect. And I like to I teach, put things up on the wall. And that way, as you sit there and you talk about things, then ideas, they flow freely. And I would submit to you in this particular case where these, 4 children or 4 young people were murdered so brutally, that this was very overwhelming for that law enforcement agency. And so as a result of that, they learned, through baptism through fire, for lack of a better term. And so I believe right now that the defense, they've hired a couple of guys out of California, as you know, for defense investigators who are doing their job. They wrote a couple early on, some affidavits they submitted, to kind of skirt around the gag order in Bryan's case. Now, the one thing that we have to remind ourselves is there is a presumption of innocence here. Now, don't get me wrong. Based on the most recent DNA information provided, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But at the same time, something to remember, that presumption of innocence, though, is not in the Constitution. There's a Supreme Court decision, Taylor versus Kentucky, recognizing a presumption of innocence as a requirement for a fair trial. What that means is there is no requirement for the general public or non-jurors to presume innocence. A jury must presume innocent until proven beyond a reasonable doubt. So we, as the general public, the reason the media is in place is because the public has a right to know. And, if we go back into the 30s and into the 40s and way back into the 20s, the media used to be allowed into the police agencies. Remember, those old police detective magazines, where they would stand there and they would take pictures while Dillinger was being arrested. And, remember the famous picture of even Dillinger laying out on the table. And so, these are the kind of things that get mixed up sometimes when arguments are made in court, that, they're protecting, the right to a fair trial for the defendant. Well, the public also has a right to know. And so, the one thing the defense is doing exceptionally well is to continue to argue the gag orders here. And, that's going down very well for them. And but what's happening behind the scenes? First of all, there has been a capital defense attorney appointed. And what does that mean? The legal representation plan should provide for assembly of a defense team that will provide a high-quality legal representation. The defense team should consist of no fewer than 2 attorneys qualified in accordance with Guidelines 5.1, an investigator, and a mitigation specialist. Okay? The defense team should contain at least 1 member qualified by trained and experienced screened individuals for the presence of mental and psychological disorders and requirements. So basically, what the law says in 5.1, qualifications of a defense counsel in a potential death penalty case, is each defendant is required for the best defense possible. So in that, what does that mean? How does that break down? There are 29 qualified attorneys in Idaho for capital cases. Fact investigators or homicide investigators are assigned to that team. And that the next person that would be assigned to that team is a mitigation specialist. Then mental health professionals and other experts as needed, such as crime scene technicians, psychological, psychiatric workups, forensic experts, et cetera, data experts, et cetera. So the defendant has this whole team come together. Bryan Kohberger has a team assigned to him, okay, to argue the facts of innocent or guilt. And of course, they're always going to focus on, innocence, because he's presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. But the one thing that the public forgets, as an investigator, the only way you solve crimes is you have to have conversation like this, you and I, okay? And we have to kind of theorize sometimes initially until the evidence points definitively to an answer, okay? And so it's important as we talk about this on this channel, and all of us that are interested in this case, that when we discuss things about him in a speculation theory, for an example, it does not mean we are not giving him the presumption of innocence. Okay? It means the only way you solve a crime is you have to climb the mountain. And when you are on top of that mountain, then you realize that the evidence has brought you there. And each step and each hand pull to get to the top of that mountain, okay, is an investigative step. And that's what they call it. We call it an investigative step and process. And the old saying is, no man got to the top of the mountain by falling there, is a true statement. The advantage that the defense has is they get to see all of that information once it's been given to them through discovery process. And so now they can sit back and they can not only analyze, but they can start taking it apart in a variety of different directions. And that's why we saw, in my opinion, we saw some of the skirting taking place in relationship to some of the gag order information. And we've heard the judge, what a name on that one, huh? What are the odds? Judge. Okay. And they now get an opportunity, as we saw early on in this thing, to go into the house. They get an opportunity to start dissecting, as I mentioned, all the evidence, because it's in front of them. They did not have to go out and discover it. It was there because the authorities who did that investigation presented it to them. And under the law, there are certain, laws like Brady and a variety of others where the defense says, hey, we want to see everything. Okay? Well, sometimes everything is not necessarily always there. But just because something is missing does not mean they don't have the right guy. And so these are the things that are going on behind the scenes. All of these individuals that I just pointed out here have all circled the wagons on behalf of Bryan Kohberger. Well, the individuals who have circled the wagons for the victims is the state of Idaho. And so all of those individuals, the DA, the investigators, Idaho State Police, Moscow PD, the FBI, they all came together and they presented the information, and then they roundtabled it and presented it to the district attorney and then eventually to the grand jury. Now, a grand jury was assembled in this case. And what shocked me was this delay tactic to attack the charges that the grand jury ultimately came to a decision and presented it as Kohberger being the suspect in this case. And so all of these situations now, as they unfold, the challenging of, the indictment, all of that information is just smoke and mirrors. Because now we know that the DNA came back with a definitive match of 5.37 octillion times more likely to be his. Now, that is a really fascinating turn of events. Because now, the science has to say more likely to be his because, just like anything else, you can't say that's blood in a crime scene. You have to write it up with, it appears to be consistent with blood. And then the lab will tell you, yes, it's blood. And that scientific report will go in. And then when you get on the stand to testify, you can, the defense or the DA will ask you, did you see, a red colored stain? Yes, it appeared to be consistent with blood. Okay. And where did you see this? Yada, yada. And then, of course, the defense will come back and say, well, investigator so-and-so, you didn't really know it was blood, did you? No, correct. It appeared to be consistent with blood. Okay. No further questions. And they always get in there and they leave you hanging. Right. And the jury goes, well, wow, those people didn't even know it was blood. The state didn't even know it was blood. Okay. Well, you did. They did. Okay. You just, in a court of law, though, you have to have scientific evidence to substantiate it. And that's that report. So again, this goes back to how many people are on their side and how many people are on the public defense or the DA side. And so this case is going to be about $2 million for the defense to the taxpayers and an estimated guess of about $10 million. That will be the cost to the taxpayers of Idaho. All right, I want to go up here. Remember this statement when Kohberger was arrested in Pennsylvania. He had a spontaneous question. Did you arrest anyone else? Okay. And as a result of that, I'm really curious what you guys think he was thinking. Because I think now that we know that there was approximately 5.37 octillion times his DNA matched on that DNA found on the knife sheath. And I was on Nancy Grace's show this week, and we talked a little bit about where that knife sheath was found. And it's really, I've heard two different things. One, I've heard that it was underneath her. One, I've heard was beside her. And so I don't really know. Okay. But I would submit to you, or at least, have us think about it. This particular question is a really interesting question when this case first kicked off. Okay. Because he asked that question, did you arrest anybody else? And I don't think an innocent person would ask that question. Because typically innocent individuals, and the response would be, what are you talking about? I didn't have anything to do with these murders. I want to talk to my attorney as soon as possible. Those are the kind of spontaneous statements that would be presented typically when a set of bracelets, handcuffs, are put on a defendant. And I've arrested thousands of them throughout my career, not just murderers. I mean, just everybody, right? From DUI to domestic to drunk in public, et cetera, literally over a long career. Okay. So for him to ask that particular question, instead of saying, what are you talking about? Why are you arresting me? He spontaneously says, did you arrest anybody else? Now that is fascinating. What do you guys think about that? Let me know in your comments. Let me know. So we now know that the DNA found on the sheath in Maddie's bed, there is no question that it is a match to Bryan Kohberger. So basically that would mean you have to go to another planet. I mean, literally, you would have to leave our atmosphere, get on a shuttle from Elon Musk, and head to Mars and see if we can find the other person or the, whoever with Elon while we're traveling. Okay. All right. So make sure you let me know what you're thinking, because I started thinking about this. There are two stops in going across country, and of course, his dad is with him through both of those. This picture is classic, by the way. His dad helped him travel 2,500 miles and then to flee and potentially hide. We don't know. But for him to ask that question at his parents' house, I thought was extremely interesting. I thought that particular question was so powerful that I think now, looking back at it in retrospect, and the more I think about this case, with now this definitive DNA evidence coming out, did he tell his father? Did he mention it to his dad? What was going on here? I don't know. I do not know, but we do know that he was digging through the trash with gloves, wearing gloves, meaning, he was putting his trash into his neighbor's trash. They had him under surveillance. His father was seen outside cleaning. I do not know if his dad was involved in cleaning the cars. But, for him to not know why his son's coming home so quickly after arriving there, shortly there, within 5 months, okay, the semester's over, so might as well pack up and come home. What were those conversations in the car, I wonder? I just wonder. I wonder, with that trash, did they go and pull some other information out of that is going to be part of this 51 terabytes of information presented? And, as we think through this, that the lab processing and filing motions about all the information that came down, i.e. the match for the DNA, they at first, had the dad's DNA. They got it out of the trash, which is considered abandoned property, by the way. Once you put that trash out and it's on the curb, law enforcement can come by during the course of an investigation and just throw it in their vehicle and drive away. Right? But this was really interesting because they went to the dad, and that was their target, to find the DNA. And I think they were probably hoping for Bryan's DNA in that trash, but they obviously got something off of the dad. And then, of course, they did the genealogy, and eventually they got a match. And then the second piece of that was, once they got the buckle, i.e. once he was in custody, they did the buckle swab inside the mouth and then sent that off. And now this is the most recent information, 5.37 octillion times more likely to be his, i.e. it's a perfect match. Okay. It is 100% a perfect match. So now the question comes, what defense do they have? i.e., how are they going to argue Bryan's DNA definitively inside that bedroom under Maddie or beside Maddie? That is a very, very high mountain to get over, in my opinion. That evidence mountain is, I mean, it can be done. We've seen it. I was in Southern California during that time with O.J. Simpson, and some great lawyering, convinced the jury that it wasn't his. Although even today he's said, yeah, it was probably mine. So what's the big picture here on the legal strategy? What say you? My feeling is this situation now has come down to, let's keep the death penalty off of the table. And that means what? How are we going to do this? Well, the defensive strategy is pretty clear. Attack, attack, attack. They will attack the investigators. They will attack the collection process. They will attack the integrity of the crime scene. They may even, carefully attack some of the victims, through their social media exposure. That is always a very tricky situation, though, because, these victims are 100% purely innocent. And, for them to go after that piece of the puzzle is much different than going after, Lori Vallow. Okay. And it would be like going after JJ and, Tylee, right? You don't want to go down that road. But they have to somehow paint this picture that the victims here are partially to blame. That's what they'll try to paint. And we see the first piece of this coming to fruition just on how in the world or how Bryan is now starting to show up in court for his hearings. Remember the first hearings, he showed up in a orange jumpsuit. And in the most recent hearings, we saw him in a blue suit, nice tie, nice shirt, hair all slicked back, looking good. Okay. But let's remember a couple of things about this. The first thing to remember is there are no closets in his jail cell. Absolutely none. Not a single closet in his jail cell. So where does he get his clothes? Where does he get his hair gel? Well, I think we all know the answers. It comes from theater. I'll call it theater, right? It's a show. His defense team is bringing his clothes to him to change before he goes out into the public arena to be seen. So they are basically making him look not like the monster that he is, potentially. I mean, think about that. They had to ask him, or ask his family, does he have, some suits we can borrow? Okay. Because what happens is before he comes out, they go into a little room, the attorneys do, and they hand him the suit, and he changes real quickly. They hand him the hair gel, and he fixes his hair. Okay. And, they give him the once over and say, okay, you look good, ready to go. Okay. And they go out. And then at the conclusion of that hearing, he goes back into that room. They take those clothes back and they hand him back his orange jumpsuit. Okay. So be not deceived by a wolf in sheep's clothing. Okay. Because what we saw, or what we know, and what the evidence will show at some point, is the idea of mass murder. 4 young people's lives were taken from the guy in the orange jumpsuit. And don't forget that. The public should never forget that. Don't ever forget that. I've had these guys in a room where, fresh off of just arresting them, and they are still reliving those events. And if you want to see a chilling interview that I did with a guy, his name is Brandon Wilson. Go into my videos, and I put 4 minutes up of Brandon Wilson, and you will see this guy relive taking the life of another human being, and in that case, it happened to be a 9-year-old child. But watch him, because when he presented himself in trial, his attorneys had done a pretty good job of, what we used to call dust him off, make him look a little spiffy. So I think it's really interesting that they're positioning him in such a fashionable way to take the sting out of how could this person have done that. Right? And you know what? We will see, how that all plays out, right? But do not be deceived. Do not be deceived. Okay. So now let's talk about why the attorney for the families potentially is in a very precarious situation. You know, the gentleman who argued on behalf of, his ability to speak with the public is really walking a fine line, in my opinion. Not that he can't and not that he shouldn't, but the defense is going to utilize everything he says in favor of Bryan Kohberger. Let me give you an example. If I was the defense attorney, I would call the family members as well, or once they're up there, and talk about some of the civil litigation if that door was open, and ask them, isn't it true you feel that even the authorities had messed up? During the trial of Bryan Kohberger, and of course, whatever the answer is, it's irrelevant because those petitions, of the right to file a civil lawsuit has already been presented. So that gives the defense an opportunity to argue that the families even thought the authorities were wrong this early in the game. I think that is a very slippery slope. I think it's a very dangerous path to take because the prosecution wants to have everybody, the families, everybody, arm in arm, hand in hand, going down that aisle together. And at the conclusion of whatever the trial is, then if he's found guilty, you want to high five each other and go down that road. If he's not, you can always file a civil tort. But I think that may not be a great move right now. And this is just my opinion. I could be 1,000% wrong. But when this trial is on at 100%, we're going to see how that plays out. Because that will play into Bryan's hand. Mark my words. It'll play into Bryan's hand. And his attorneys are loving it. By the fact that the family's attorney is arguing with the judge about whether or not he's under the gag order. In this kind of case like this, that is so high profile, it's best to lay low and below the radar, which the authorities have been doing quite effectively. And then at the conclusion, then everything, can be reassessed and, taken in a different direction if that's what they need. But that is just my opinion right now. It's not a good look. And I think it could play in favor of Kohberger. The defense will say even the victim's family thinks the cops and the authorities messed up. So he's giving them, the defense, an argument of sloppy police work, yada, yada, even before the trial starts. Okay. We saw just recently a Murdaugh trial where, they asked the detective, I forget his name, about the grand jury testimony that he gave. And then he was up there trying to explain it, that, yeah, but I didn't have this other information. But now that I have it, you're right. I did say that to the grand jury, but I didn't have that information. You can't say something that you don't have. Okay. But, the defense very skillfully almost crafted that and twisted it to call that investigator a liar. Okay. Well, these are the kind of things that they're trained to do and they're supposed to do. That is their job. Okay. And it doesn't make them bad people, by the way. Some are very skilled at doing that. My good buddy, as you know, Billy Little, that guy's a machine. Okay? And he's been on both sides of the coin, prosecution and defense. And he was even a judge. Okay? But they have a duty to, go to these places sometimes to represent their defendants. So the fact that there are lawsuits, on hold, that's basically what that civil tort, notice is. It's a lawsuit on hold against the University of Idaho, Washington State University, the police, everybody. The defense is going to take notice of that. And it will be very interesting to see how that plays out, in my opinion. Because that's implying the state did something on purpose to not want to solve the crime that Bryan Kohberger is in custody for and has been arrested. So this is really careful ground. It's thin ice. Because, again, thinking through this civil litigation is a defense attorney's dream. Let's hypothesize, right? Mr. So-and-so, yeah. Isn't it true you feel, again, that the cops screwed up? Well, early on, yeah, we were feeling that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, what exactly did they mess up, in your opinion? And now you can see all of this really going into a different direction pretty quickly. And you hate to see that. You just hate to see it because they are suffering. The families are suffering. Trust me. I get it. I get it. But now that we've got this guy, or they have this guy, for lack of a better term, then the process has to take its course. It has to take its course. Okay? And I just felt so sorry for that anger being channeled in such a fashion, and then whoever grabbed it and ran with it, i.e., their attorney, is it's problematic. That individual should just slow down. Just slow down. So let me put up a couple of comments here that have been coming up. First of all, let me thank each of you for joining us here tonight. I'm so grateful, and thank you for becoming members. And if you have not gone over to Josh's channel yet at the lab, get over there and subscribe. Good guy, good buddy, and great shows. Thank you so much, Ice Queen 7. All right, we got a question here. DNA once thought to be the gold standard. Attack the science. That will be the defense. They will attack the testing process. I agree, Josh, that will be part of the move. No question about it. Okay, thank you, Chris, for covering and explaining this. The titles across YouTube have been making me nuts. I know. I've been so busy working that I've not had a chance to keep up with, what a lot of people are saying. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Blondie. You guys are awesome. And Joe, can you start grabbing some good questions as they're coming in, please? I much appreciate that. Sarah, thank you for becoming a member. Okay, so let's talk about it, guys. What do you think? We've got all of this stuff moving forward here. The cameras now Some of the most recent, motions are all about, cameras in the courtroom. And what was fascinating is, the civil attorney was arguing more than the state. And, that's never a good sign in a high profile, case here. Okay, so this one here, Vicky. Why no DNA in his apartment or his car? I don't know if we really know that yet. Vicky, do we? That is a great question. Where's his? That's more of a comment. Oh, let's see here. Shadow show. You're rationalizing. That's confirmed bias. Yeah, I'm a retired homicide detective with a 93% solvability rate. I'm biased with 57 or 5.37 octillion times that it's his DNA. Yeah, he's done. But thank you. That's a great comment. Let's see here. And welcome to the program, by the way. Hopefully you're a subscriber. Let's see here. Where is his alibi? Great question, Nick, and great seeing you here tonight, by the way. It's great seeing you here. That is a great question. What is his alibi? What's it going to be? Obviously, he's going to say, with the knife DNA, that, maybe he picked it up at a knife show and that the real perpetrator brought it with him and planted it underneath the victim. That would be really interesting to see what happens there. So this is, let's talk about that 51 terabytes of video. Do you realize that 1 million megabytes is a terabyte? So that's 51 million megabytes. Okay. I think if we take the totality of the circumstances here, and if we compress it all together, which, they will methodically go through and start presenting, the 12 phone pings, the return, all of the information before that. We heard, and on Dateline, the information about where the knife was potentially bought through Amazon. Now, remember, this is just information that they presented on a national news network. I think that within that 51 terabytes of audio and video, there's going to be some really dark stuff in there. Because you just don't wake up one day and decide, okay, today's the day I'm going to go slaughter 4 people. I don't think he knew. This is just my opinion. I don't think he knew that Ethan was going to be in there. I do believe that house with all the girls, that was his target. That was his target. And Bob, thank you. This is great. 5.37 octillion, that is more than 625 plus 15 zeros times the population of the Earth's chance that it isn't him. Thank you. Thank you for doing that, and welcome to the show. That is a great math problem that he has. And I think we can all agree that math problem is going to be one heck of a challenge to get over. It really is. Thank you, Gene, so much. Now, and if we think about that, inside of that, I have had the belief from the very first moment Karen and I went out there. When we stood there, and I was in the back, and Karen walked around to the side, and then she walked up into the front. And I thought to myself, man, this is going to be really interesting to see the guy that comes out of this. And when we had Dr. Bricado and Greg and Ann Burgess on, we talked about, what the potential profile would be of this type of individual. And by golly, if you've not seen that early on when Gary and Greg and Ann nailed, in my opinion, they pinned his personality down. I mean, really lickety split. Now, you have to remember something about Gary. He has the largest research study of mass murderers in the world. So he deals with these guys on a, moment to moment, daily basis. And so for Gary to go through and just nail this guy as succinctly as he did was a fascinating moment. And, if you didn't get a chance to go see that, go look at some of the information that Dr. Bricado put up. Okay. I believe you're right, Chris. Complicated says, I believe you're right, Chris. Ethan caught him off guard. Two people in the same bed made it faster to get in, do what he had to do, and to get out. I really think you're right. Going back, as we think through this even further, all of us, that, Ethan was a challenge for him. If you look at Kohberger and, you look at his life, he wanted to be a police cadet. He had this kind of, what we would call a wannabe, personality type. But at the same time, growing up, he was that kid that, people picked on him. Okay. And as a result of that, all of that anger and resentment went to a storage house somewhere inside of his personality. And, folks would call that compartmentalization, right? That he compartmentalized, that part of his behavior. And then at some point that had to be released into the environment. And we saw, as Gary talks about, Dr. Bricado, we saw indications of early on, where he was just not able to communicate with women. He wasn't able to, hold on, socially. He was socially awkward. He was using, a variety of apps to get around, his social inabilities. And, we see him even today where right now, I would submit to you that he's on a stage. Okay. And he's going to play this moment for as long as he can. The longer it takes, delay, as Nancy Grace says, as long as it takes, okay, he is enjoying every moment of this, every moment of it. I really believe that. And as a result of that, he's not going to crack real easy because he feels it's to his advantage to play this role. And the role that we're seeing now with the suit and everything was a pretty drastic transformation rather quickly. Wouldn't you agree? When you agree to see him, come out in this last hearing where he's all, spiffed up. I think what did it for me was the hair gel. Let's see here. Yeah, I agree with you, Pamela. He's never gotten this much attention in his life. Let's see here. Was anything found in regard to the man who passed away that lived in the same apartment as BK? Monique asked. I do not have the answer to that, Monique. Maybe somebody else will. Let's see here. I think, this is more of a comment. Complicated says, I think Ann Taylor and BK are preparing for a documentary. Let's hope not. Let's see here. He's loving the attention. Southern Sass. Great seeing you too, Southern Sass. Thank you so much for being here. That suit did not make him as innocent. Too much evidence. Yeah. A wolf in sheep's clothing. Let's see here. I believe he's superior than anybody else, Lori says, than everyone else. He does. Absolutely, he does. Do you think he's going to enjoy telling his story, Unravel? What do you think? I mean, what's your opinion? Do you think he's marveling in all of this attention? I don't know if he'll get up on the stand if the death penalty is on the table. But he may, just because he needs to control all of the narrative here as much as he can. As much as he can. Jeff asked, how do defense attorneys sleep at night knowing they defend murders, etc., and work hard to get them off? Well, the Constitution requires that balance, right, Jeff? Of, the scales and the lady justice who's blind. Hey, they're doing a job. And if a defense attorney tells the truth, then their job is pure. If they lie and continue to lie and know that they're lying, then those are the type of people that don't sleep well at night. But I have many friends who are defense attorneys because they did their job. And they try to be as professional as they can, and they realize that they took an oath and they swore to that oath to defend the Constitution. And so that means he is entitled to the best representation available. The best available. So Shadow's back here. Oh my God, it looks like a witch trial. Okay, awesome. Thanks for coming. Oh, I love these guys. Let's see here. Thank you, Michelle. Do we think BK is being honest with his lawyer? That is a great question, JD. These defendants sometimes just don't tell it the way it is until you have an opportunity to get into the nitty-gritty with them. And when you're faced with, 5.37 octillion times, that's the moment you want the truth, because a good defense attorney will tell their clients, look, here it is, whether we like it or not, but we have to explain how your DNA got on that knife sheath. Okay. And this is a great comment here. Jenny says, defense's job is to make the state prove their client's guilt. That is exactly right. That's exactly right. Let's see here. Any more questions? Oh yeah. This is also a really interesting point. So pathetic how much some of these women online think BK is innocent and won't listen to basic things. Well, these are the same individuals that let's see here. These are the same individuals that felt that Charles Manson was innocent. This phenomena goes way back, and there's a terminology for it. They write letters, they get married, etc. They need help. That's it. I mean, that's all. That's what it comes down to. And you can't fix it. So let's not dwell on it, right? Let's find out. So I'm hearing there's information about 2 other DNA profiles. The report stated they found 2 other male DNA profiles in the house and one unidentified male DNA on a glove that was outside. 2 male profiles from inside have been identified, only one not. Well, I think it's going to be interesting. They'll probably find, if they found 50 male DNA profiles in that house, that wouldn't surprise me. That was a party house. Okay. But did they find the other 2 males and the third male profile on the knife sheath? If the answer is no, then it belongs to Bryan. Okay. And if the answer is it's Bryan, how does Bryan going to defend his DNA inside of their house, just moving there from Pennsylvania? How about I think that's a better approach, because there's going to be hundreds of male profiles and hundreds of female profile within inside of that house on the DNA. I don't know, how they're going to completely, argue that, and that's not reasonable doubt. Okay. Because you still have Bryan's in there. If Bryan didn't have his DNA in there, then you could argue, like Susan Morphew Berry, that there were, 2 unknown males in her Range Rover. And he's walking today after being arrested for killing his wife, whose body has never been found, yet she, according to him, left. So let's hope that those other DNA profiles, if I was the prosecutor, I'd just come right out and say, hey, yeah, there's a lot of other DNA profile in the house and on the glove outside. But did you know there were 5.37 octillion times a positive match that Bryan's profile is next to Maddie, who's deceased, in her bed? Are any of these other profiles next to Maddie, who's deceased in her bed, ladies and gentlemen of the jury? The answer is no. The answer is no. So we'll see what happened, as the defense goes down that rabbit hole. They're more than welcome to do that, and I think that would be a good thing to bring it up and let the prosecution argue it. I think it would be really, that's Karen sneezing, God bless you, home, behind us, right? And they can say that he previously partied in that house, okay, with the knife sheath, right? And that the party argument, unfortunately, I agree that he can say that, but here's the challenge. That knife sheath is right next to a deceased victim. That will be the clarity of focus. I think that the prosecution will take that case right to that bedroom and then put it on Mrs. Taylor to argue why that knife sheath and his DNA is on that snap next to this victim who was brutally stabbed. The DNA becomes irrelevant at that point, this other stuff that's out there, because his DNA is there at that crime scene. It's there. And so the elimination process to do that is real simple. You get the criminalist up there and you go through it and you say, did you find other unknown male DNA? Yes, I did. And where did you find it? Well, we found it on the door handle, wherever it is. We found it on a glove out front. Did that match Bryan Kohberger? No, it did not. Did you find Bryan Kohberger's DNA? Yes, we did. And where did you find that? It was laying on the sheet. It was on the sheath, the snap. And where was that sheath found? Partially underneath or beside Maddie. And now the defense has an aha moment. How are they going to argue that? What are they going to say? Bryan wasn't in the room? Bryan had been in the room? The girls didn't see that sheath and they went to bed and laid on it and the suspect came in. Those other 3 people came in and murdered her while she was sleeping in her bed? And just happened to be the sheath that had Bryan Kohberger's DNA on it? I think that's going to be a long stretch. I think it's going to be a long stretch. So they will attack the science, just like anybody else, defense attorney, and that will be the strategy. That will be the strategy, attack the science. Because the other strategy would have been, take it to the court of public opinion and paint him as this really, nice, cool dude, okay, who doesn't weird out women when he's around them. There's some guy, just one of the dirty cops. Yeah, they planted it. Yeah. Well, I love these guys. I really do. Thanks for coming. Make sure that these individuals are gone. And by the way, we appreciate you trolls that show up and put your comments in here, because at the conclusion of all this, I just block you from my channel. So you get one shot, and I use it well, because you're gone. Oh, you guys crack me up. Okay, they'll blame the DoorDash guy. I like that one. Mark Furman, where are you? Exactly, Jeanette. That's hysterical. That's great. Let's see here. Betty says, Chris, let's not forget it. All the time it's been proven that Bryan had visited at night, the house sitting in his car only. Yes, Betty, that is a great point. They also have another piece of this puzzle that they have to overcome. And Betty, that is a really solid point. They have, they have all of the 12 pings and all of that evidence that they're going to come at them with 51 terabytes of video. And I'm going to submit to you, I think that there is some fantasy playing out here with Bryan Kohberger. And I think, guys and gals, we're going to discover that when it's released, that there is a whole bunch of information that will come out in relationship to what's in his digital footprint. And I'm going to tell you, I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of pornography. There will be information in there that is building his fantasy. Remember the colleague that he volunteered to help set up her cameras into their house, and then the first thing he asked to be removed was the TV from his house. I think that was his window to hell, in my opinion. I think he was home watching that young lady and got into, her information and was peeking in on her. And I also believe that in the back of the house, he sat up there and he watched those girls. Yeah, and the one girl that, as Caddy says, where he asked, made the comment, you have good birthing hips. And, those are the kind of creepy things that Bryan, there's going to be a lot more of that coming out. He is absolutely not going to be around that stuff. It's going to come out pretty clean at some point when the state gets their opportunity to go at it. So we'll see where it's going to go. Okay, so let's see here. The digital footprint is going to seal it. Yep. He had way too much storage to be doing nothing. Thank you, Complicated. That is a really great point. He's a bigger creeper than we know, Jim Bond says. Love that too, Jim Bond. I love it. Oh, that's a really cool name. let's see here. I'm pulling up some of your comments, guys. Yes, Just Connie says we need proof he was Papa Roger. Then it's a done deal based on his remarks. Yeah, well, they'll tie that together through IP in a variety of other ways. If that was him, right? Everybody, I really appreciate each and every one of you. Let's see, the dog, to put him in the room. Yeah, that dog, if they find any of that dog hair, which, remember, I can't remember if it was in the car. Do you guys remember? Keep me honest here. Keep me honest. Let's see, how were there 0 screams from any of the victims? We don't know until the autopsy report comes out, but if he went for their, the neck area pretty quickly, then that would explain that. And a lot of times if there's, alcohol on board, and if he ambushed them while they were sleeping, then it happens so fast that, they didn't have a chance other than to wake up and realize, this is a horrific thing that's taking place. Animal hair in his apartment. Thank you, CM. I appreciate that. There's gonna be, this guy's got some explaining to do, and quick blows, as Complicated says here, very fast. I don't think if he started at the top floor and then came down and ran into Ethan, then the statement that the other 2 girls, one of them hears is, I'm here to help you. Remember, I called Bryan the helper a long time ago. And that, because that was just his personality type, right? He was that kid once he lost all that weight, and, he went into heroin world for a while. And then he came out of heroin world and then became this, student. And it's going to be very interesting to find out how much he studied BTK. I just think he's got more leaning in that direction than he does with Ted Bundy. I believe that he had he not been captured, and now that we know that it's his DNA, definitively, if they had not captured him, it would not have been long till he struck again. And no, I do not. Donna says, do you think the October trial will stand? No. I think there will be another continuance at some point because that is a really good move for the defense to continue to delay this as much as possible and as far out as possible. Phone pings at a tower, even though you're not close. Can a phone ping at a tower? No, you have to be within range of that ping. It has to go to the nearest tower. Now, it could go to a further tower, but there's a closer one, but then it will transfer automatically as you're going by. Okay, send it to Chris. Pamela, what does Susan have? Susan, send it to me. If you got a comment, put it up there. Guys, I'm trying to, the chat's moving pretty quickly. Buddy, where is Buddy? Let's see if we can find Buddy for everybody. I need a pup update. Let's see. Leah's asking where Buddy is. Budjo, where are you? Oh, here he is. Hang on, let me get him. Hang on, Buddy. Okay, pup update. on Budzo. So he went to the vet recently, and as you know, he has a little leaky heart valve, and he's on medication, and the doc says the medication's working great for him. I put some treats up there. My secret weapon. So yeah, keep him in your prayers, guys. He's such a good pup, and we took him recently to another vet. We took him to a cardiologist who has a leaky valve, and unfortunately, he's not a candidate to close it. So he gets extra fluid in his lungs, and so he's on a diuretic, and he cleans it out religiously, all over the place. But we've got him on a good regimen. He's, as you could tell, there doesn't seem like there's anything going on with him. But he is an absolute amazing pup, smart as a whip. I threw some merch up for him, not a shameless plug, but he's got his own cups and that kind of stuff. But he's a joy to our family, and of course to you guys. Hopefully one day we can all meet and we'll bring Budzo with us. But the doc's giving him a great prognosis. There he goes over the seats. We're in an area where there's a lot of rabbits, which is for a Jack Russell, heaven. And so the other day it was kind of funny. Karen had opened the door and there was a jackrabbit right outside, and man, Buddy bolted and chased him all through the fields. I had to go after him. It was hysterical, but he's a good boy. But thank you so much for asking about Buddy. We sure love him, and I know that you folks do as well. We appreciate that. The shop vac. What are my thoughts? Thank you, Mary. I think that shop vac may hold some really interesting evidence. That is a possibility where, so many different things can be captured inside of those. I share the story, and thank you, Mary, for that question and for that kind donation. I share the story. We had a situation years ago where it was a body dump, and the suspect, had denied that they were ever in this area. And so we took his car filter, his air filter, and we got a botanist to come in and go out to the crime scene where the body was found and collect samples from all the vegetation and foliage out there. And lo and behold, if we didn't get pollen samples, that they were able to send to the lab and get a positive match. And it was pretty amazing. And of course, the suspect at that point, when you go back and you drop it on the table, what are you going to say? You weren't there? It's the same argument that Brian's going to have to say. Hey, my DNA is on that sheath, but he's going to make something up. The defense is going to have that is a real uphill battle for them. If you just take everything away, he still has to argue, i.e. the defense, his team still has to argue why that DNA is in the place that it is. And I think it's going to be a really, really interesting trial to see how that unfolds. I think you guys, may have better ideas than me, but I believe that is going to be really interesting. The latest motion on Friday was obviously about, getting the court to allow cameras into the courtroom. And it sounds like the judge is leaning towards a pool camera. At least now, that's what Judge is leaning towards, allowing one pool camera and probably one print reporter to be able to go inside and then start feeding the information out to the rest of the world. So anyway, that's this week's program. I've got a lot of stuff coming up. I'll probably do one next week early, probably Wednesday. I'll be up here again. I want to thank each and every one of you who support this channel. We sure love you. We appreciate you. I also want to thank all the individuals who showed up here to, showed themselves. That way I can now delete you and you can go away. And so encourage your friends to show up so that we can, block you from this channel. We love each and every one of you. Have a great week. Are you ready to go to Hawaii? Because I certainly am. Take care of yourself. Be kind to each other as we continue to press forward in trying to find out what the truth is in relationship to this case. God bless you and have a great evening. Take care of one another. Again, give a big hug to those you love around you. Have a good one.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away.